the crime itself has received a huge amount of publicity. Uh, Number one, the people that were involved were very prominent. The North Korean aspect created a lot of interest. The fact that it involved the Federal Reserve of New York and correspondent banking really caught the imagination of the world. And obviously, the amount of money and the way that the money was stolen, really caught the public's imagination. And there's been entire books written on it. There's been series on TV made about this. This slide shows a very prominent series done by the BBC. And then the FBI and Department of Justice in the US actually went after the cyber criminals so that we have in a very, very detailed indictment that explains what happened. Uh, there was a lot of other uh, cyber intrusions that were performed by the North Koreans, the Sony Pictures cyber intrusion. There was many, many banks in the period from 2015, 2016, 2017, and later, which the banks were hacked. But then there was also a lot of say crypto companies that were hacked by the North Koreans. There was defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, and then just general cybercrime scams that were done by the North Korean. But as we said, the key to this one was the fact that they could translate the cyber intrusion into actual cash. And the way that they did that was they hacked into the Bank of Bangladesh, or the Bangladesh Bank server about a year before the cyber crime. They then waited and surveilled, the network for a year till they understood really the day-to-day activity of processing wires. Then they waited for the convergence of several 3-day weekends that would give them additional time to make the theft over a 3-day weekend when there was less opportunity for bank operations groups in the Philippines and in Bangladesh to actually stop the crime. And then they also timed it so that they were just starting on the US weekend for the Federal Reserve. So they waited about a year. And in one weekend in February of 2016, they executed their hack. They sent 35 SWIFT messages out of the Bangladesh bank account with the Federal Reserve. And Bangladesh Bank is the central bank of Bangladesh. Those were the primary reserve funds of the Bangladesh government. And they were moving most of it to the Philippines, Rizal Bank. They also moved some of the funds to Sri Lanka, which we'll talk about, because Sri Lanka immediately saw the problem, immediately shut it down, and is an example of a success story where an AML program worked exactly as it should. So it actually makes a great contrast for practitioners to look at Sri Lanka as a case where everything worked the way it should, and the Philippines case as an example where it didn't work. Significantly, even though 35 wires were sent or attempted to be sent, the Federal Reserve detected this scam relatively quickly after the fifth message was sent. And so from message 6 all the way to 35, they did not send it. The reason for that was the early wires had the street address of the banking center in Bangladesh that had the word Jupiter in it, which was a word that triggered the sanctions screening for the New York Fed. There was a ship with the word Jupiter in it. So that went from straight through processing to needing a manual review. the first few wires survived the manual review, but after whoever was doing the review in the New York Fed saw that there was multiple ones and started looking at the details, they realized something was wrong, and they simply stopped sending any more wires and then initiated an inquiry process. So before we move into the next slide, I do want to summarize Bangladesh Bank situation is very interesting, I think, to cyber teams that are trying to protect banks, and the Department of Justice indictment goes through a lot of detail on how the cyber intrusion occurred. The point of this exercise is to look at how they got the money out, not the cyber intrusion itself. And the reason for that is there was many other cyber intrusions in which the North Koreans were unsuccessful at getting much money out. So for them, the major issue wasn't the cyber intrusion, it was to somehow circumvent the AML programs on the cash outside.
I'm so happy that we are doing this case because, as you pointed out, that this is not only about cybercrime only, but it has different, dimension, especially with regards to AML and how cybercrime actually turned the whole action into real money, and it was, tunneled through actual banking steps, and how one country responded in a different way versus another country. So I'm sure that we will hear more from you as you take us through the slides.